Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our town hall meeting. We're addressing racial disparities in social work licensing. Today is Tuesday, January 31st. We are SWARE. We're the social workers for equality and anti-racism. Along with us is the NASW Maryland, National Association of Social Workers, Maryland. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so the guidelines for tonight. So the guidelines for tonight, throughout the presentation, everybody here will be muted. Please utilize the chat to place any questions or comments you have. A member of SWARE will engage you to acknowledge your questions. Your questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Please be mindful that we may not be able to get to everybody with all the questions submitted. Following the formal agenda that we have today, SWARE members will remain on the call and everybody will be unmuted for open discussion. We understand that this topic can bring up a lot of strong emotions. Please keep your comments kind and respectful of others.
Sorry
about that. And an introduction to SWARE for many people who may not know who we are, and I'm not going to read everything on here. I'm sure everybody here has at least a master's degree, right? But we're professionals and we're involved in the community, and we're working towards fighting against discriminatory practices with the license exam and keeping out many of the social workers in the profession and independent practices. We're rooted in the behalf that, sorry, I've got to get a little bit closer. We're rooted in the belief that harmful barriers have no place in the field that are intrusive towards us, not only for the public we serve, but for those who rightfully earned their place to be here. We're dedicated to confronting and making changes where racism and white supremacy are embedded in social work policies and practices. And we do have two ASL professionals here. As you can see, we have Karen currently practicing, and Mary will also be providing ASL as well. So thank you to them for being a part of this. And if you can't see them, they're spotlighted, but if you can't see them, please put in the chat that you can't see them. Thank you for being here, Karen.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I understood. Thank you. And without further ado, we have one of our first speakers here, Miss Mary Beth. Am I pronouncing this right? DiMartino? Am I pronouncing that right?
Hey.
Please let me know.
Yeah, my name's Mary Beth DiMartino, and I'm the executive director of the Maryland chapter of the NASW, National Association of Social Workers. So I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to chat with you guys this evening, and just really appreciate the opportunity. Been talking with you guys for a while, and lots of other groups, and so I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be here to talk with you guys this evening. I just want to take a moment to just kind of share with you our statement around the ASWB data. The NASW Maryland chapter stands with all of our members in shock at the pass rate data recently released by the ASWB for their national social work exam. The disaggregated data shows glaring and unacceptable discrepancies in the pass rates based on race, age, educational institution, and geographic locations. We call on all stakeholders at both the state and national levels to aggressively address the implicit bias and root cause of this data. We pledge to take a lead in Maryland by coordinating collaboration, determining root causes, and supporting legislative action. We are providing direct remedial support and educational opportunities to our members who have been impacted by the underlying forces at work. Our lens will include both short-term and long-term responses to this to reduce and ultimately eliminate these gaps. We are, as you all are, very concerned about this data and the things that we're seeing. And I don't know how many of you are members of NASW, but we have been putting out some statements on this. We are addressing this both short-term and long-term. But I just thank you guys for the opportunity to speak here about what are some of our short-term and long-term strategies. As you know, we are a national member-driven organization here at NASW. We are deeply concerned about the bias that appears to be present in the ASWB exam. We are concerned about, what all of us are seeing here. For those of you who don't know me, I am the executive director here at NASW. I've been here for about a year, but much like many of you, I'm a clinician. I worked in child welfare for over 30 years. I have been in the field providing services to children and families, doing the work. And so, ultimately, that's our big concern, is doing the work, working with the vulnerable people that we serve, and being able to eliminate the barriers to those of us who are trying to do the work. And so over the past few months, and actively even more so over the past few days and weeks, I have corresponded with many of you. I've listened to many of you. I have heard about your feelings, your strong, deeply held feelings and vulnerabilities about the current state of the ASWB exam. I've heard so many of you share your stories, your personal stories about the bias that you've experienced personally, professionally, how it's impacted you and your families, your career, your work. And I just want you to know that I've heard you, and that this is important for us as a chapter, an organization that deeply cares about our profession. My colleagues across the United States are deeply concerned as well, and we join their voices in listening and trying to develop a national response, a state response, a chapter response. There are short-term and long-term implications for all of us, and we take that very seriously here. We are committed to listening to you. We are committing to finding solutions and bringing about change. I just want you guys to know that, nationally, the NASW takes this matter very seriously. NASW stance and our stance as a member chapter is that we have an anti-racism lens. That is the spirit and approach to all that we do, the work that we do. Our goal is to enhance the professional growth and development of our members, that we want to create and maintain professional standards, to advance sound social policies, and to have a diverse group of professionals committed to the values, integrity, competency, and importance of human relationships, the dignity and worth of each person, and social justice. And I do believe that this is one of the most important social justice issues of our time. I do think that this is an important issue. And so, we are committed to demonstrating best practices in diversity, equity, inclusion of all people. So we have been meeting with stakeholders. We've been meeting with you. We've been listening to you. We've been hearing your stories, and we are committed to you, all of you as social workers in our state. We do this within accordance of our code of ethics, We take a stance against racial hatred, bias, systematic racism, and the oppression of specific groups, both institutionally and structural levels. And so, that is what is in our code of conduct in our profession. But it's also individually a call that we all feel too, not just within our profession, but I think many of us in the chapter feel that both personally and professionally. And you can find that on the NASW Code of Ethics. To date, we at the NASW Maryland chapter have taken several steps to address the concerns that have been raised. We have been holding town halls. We have been talking with groups and listening to the stories from all of you. We have been trying to formulate both short-term and long-term responses. We are meeting with senators and legislators to look at what are the concerns, what can we do on the short-term and long-term issues to look at responses that are both long-term, dealing with the COMAR regulations, and also looking at what are short-term things we can do. Immediately, we are looking at offering hiring professionals who are the lead in our field in teaching social work prep courses for this exam to help those, as it is the law right now currently in Maryland. We are offering free exam prep courses to our members to help them pass this exam. We are offering that for free for our members. And we have very skilled, wonderful people who offer this course and making it free for our members. We are also working to create a scholarship program to help those that we've heard stories of people taking it 17, 18, 19 times of this exam, to help those who are facing financial hardships of having to take these exams repeatedly. So we're working on establishing a scholarship fund for our members to help them who've been impacted financially by this. And we are working with those legislators and those in the General Assembly to work to try to address and look at issues with whether or not we can influence the exam and work on the regulations. At this moment, it is the law, but is it something that we can work on together? We want to look at all sides, though, because we realize that a lot of people have worked very hard for our profession. We want to make sure that we don't lose ground for social workers in terms of pay. People have worked very hard to get social workers paid a good wage and things like that. So we are working on forming a coalition task force that can look at all those things, to look at this diligently and responsibly. And we want to do that, and we want to make sure that we are doing right by all of you. So I do welcome you to please, dialogue with us, tell us your thoughts, share your feelings and ideas and suggestions. We know that there has to be short-term and long-term responses to this. And we also know we need data. We are going to probably be working on a survey to find out how Marylanders have been impacted by this exam, how many times people have had to take it, what type of prep have you done for this exam. So when we do the survey, please participate in that. We would really like to have some good data so that we can actually find out what's happening. And we thank those of you who have been brave, who have shared your stories with us. And thank you for those who've reached out to us and told us, what you've been going through. So we can't do this without you. We need you. We need your partnership, and we need your collaboration to help us. And we just thank you for those who have come forward and shared your stories. We know that this is something that's going to take all of us working together to solve these problems going forward. We're working on creating workforce strategies with our government officials. We know that social workers are uniquely qualified to address the needs of Marylanders. We know that we need more social workers who look like the people that we serve, and we want a diverse and well-trained workforce. And we need all of you to help us do that. And so I please ask all of you to please dialogue with me, share with me your experiences. I need to hear from you. I want to hear from you. My contact information is here. Please reach out to me. And if you want to be involved in some of these strategies that we're doing, please reach out. Let me know how I can, bring you in, because I know that I can't do this work alone. So I really do thank you all for your input, your collaboration, and for you teaching me, because I know that I have a lot to learn. So thank you guys for your opportunity and reaching out to me. All of these information strategies will be on our website, and they'll be coming out in our e-news, but I really do appreciate all of you and all of those who have reached out to me. And I do encourage you guys to please keep letting me know how we can represent you better. And I just really appreciate all the feedback and support I've had. So thank you.
This is Karen, the interpreter. Would you mind switching over to Mary now?
And thank you for your time, Mary Beth.
Absolutely.
Next up, Mariah's going to go over the problem.
And
Working on it, Karen. Thanks.
And we can go to the next slide.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm gonna hold off till we've done the transition. Okay.
Good to go.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm just gonna briefly go over some numbers that many have probably already seen before, but just to, as Mary Beth discussed, data is helpful, as well as lived experience. So in August 2022, as most know, the ASWB Association of Social Work Boards released a report confirming what many had already suspected, observed, and experienced. Exam pass-fail rates showed disparities consistent across states, schools, and levels of licensure based on race, gender, age, and language. The reports did not release data regarding disabled people or people who accessed disability accommodations. On this slide, we have information about national data, and this was from the Association of Social Work Boards. This information on this slide is about folks who made 2 or more attempts to pass the clinical social work licensing exam. As you'll see, there's widespread disparity between test takers of different racial backgrounds, with white test takers passing at a 91% rate between 2018 and 2021 versus Black test takers passing at a 57% rate. And we've got Latinx, Asian, multiracial, and Indigenous peoples falling somewhere in between. We also see here for age categories for test takers within 18 to 29 years old, there's a 91% pass rate after 2 or more attempts for the clinical license on a national level. And if you're 50 or older, there was a 65% pass rate. And then folks in their 30s or 40s fell somewhere in between. For folks whose primary language is English, there was an 83% pass rate after 2 or more attempts on the clinical exam, and only a 70% pass rate for those whose primary language is not English. Next slide. This is similar but different. So this is for the master's level exam. Again, for those who took the exam 2 or more times, White test takers were 91% of white test takers passed the exam after 2 or more attempts versus Black test takers, only 52% were able to pass. And then again, Latinx, Asian, multiracial, and Indigenous people falling somewhere in between. And it would be racist to think that it is related to a person's race, right? Their ability to complete an exam. And we'll get into it later on in the presentation about what this data is telling us and the lived experiences behind it. National data on race and ethnicity. So the last slide did have a little bit, again, breakdowns for folks who are not native English speakers and based on age. For this national data, for the first time passes, again, you'll see widespread disparities for the LCSW-C exam and the LMSW exam, with white folks passing on the first try at 86% and 83% for each respective exam, and Black folks passing at 43% to 44%. And again, Latinx, Indigenous, Asian, and multiracial folks falling somewhere in between. And then here in Maryland, we see a slight difference from the national trends, but still significant racial disparities for both the clinical exam and the master's level exam. For folks who attempted for the first time, they took the test. The pass rate, for white folks, was 88 to 90% based on LCSW-C or LMSW. And for Black folks, it was 43% to 51% for each respective exam. And again, Latinx folks, Asian folks, and multiracial folks falling somewhere in between. There was insufficient data for Indigenous test takers here in Maryland. And that's next slide. I'll toss it off to Felicia.
All right, I'll wait for the transition. Hello everyone. My name is Felicia. So I want to talk a bit about everything that Maria just said and the impact of that, just giving you a comprehensive look. Psychologically, in addition to the professional harm for social work graduates of color, that looks like spending hundreds, or in my case, thousands of dollars to re-prep, to retake the exam, unable to either enter the profession, and then once you're lucky enough to, and I say lucky because we already have seen all that data about the exams, advance your careers past sometimes the LMSW level, as we know that the LC seems to be, for whatever reason, for folks of color and their intersectionalities, very ridiculously hard. At this time, there's a dire shortage of providers. Agencies are unable to hire or promote them. The need far outstrips the availability of clinicians, in addition to that, supervisors. And now supervisors are forced to let go, even when the person is doing a great job, because the requirement is that you pass these exams in order to get your licensure. And the highest need populations continue to lack access. They lack access to cultural humility of care. The cultural and historical connection is denied to those most in need and least likely to trust. If representation is as important as social work says, as the social work profession says, they are making it very, very hard to find and see that representation. Next slide. And so our lovely data folks, that's our PartisWare, was able to put together what we could actually have if test takers of the global majority passed at the same rate as white test takers during the period covered by the data release, which was about 10 years, 2011 to 2021. Maryland would have these many more licensed social workers. We are currently in a mental health crisis. We have been for many years. We're also in a public health crisis in which we know that social workers, we do everything. We could have 88 more LBSWs, we could have 883 more LMSWs, and we could have 257 more LCSWs. 1,227 total social workers is what we were missing out on at this time. And I'm going to pass it over to Mike for FAQs.
That's me. Hi, everybody. So first of all, my name is Mike Massey. I am a Maryland resident, professor of social work at Catholic University, and a member of SWARE. And I just want to say that it's just so great to be with colleagues and fellow social workers who care about this issue. And we're just excited to be able to meet and talk with you today and share this information and keep moving towards progress. I'm going to talk for a few minutes to answer some common questions about this issue and provide important context in understanding why change is needed. So one question that comes up quite a bit is that people wonder if when we say we want to eliminate exams, are we saying that social workers should not be licensed? And the answer very plainly is no. Something that ASWB and social work boards have effectively done is to convince people that licensure and exams are one and the same, but that is just not true. We can have licensure requirements, and already do, that don't include exams at all. And as I'll discuss in a moment, we're saying that when you have exams that produce inequality in the profession and serve no known purpose, they should not be part of licensure. Aside from exams, social workers are already required to obtain a social work degree from an accredited institution, accumulate thousands of hours of supervised practice, and meet continuing education requirements. That's already a very high bar that ensures a strong baseline of training and supervision. Exams haven't always been part of licensure, and they don't need to always be part of licensure. So next slide. Perhaps the biggest issue to address is the notion that these exams serve to, quote, protect the public. This is the language that ASWB uses repeatedly, but here's the problem. Based on the evidence, the only thing we can say for certain is that the exams protect the public from a diverse and dedicated workforce. Here's what we know for sure. These exams are inequity and stratification machines. These exams enable the vast majority of younger native English-speaking white social workers to be licensed and advance in the field, while thousands of people of color, older folks, and non-native speakers are left to take and retake and stagnate in the field and even abandon the profession altogether. This is a fact. It's in the data, and we'd probably see other kinds of disparities if ASWB didn't refuse to make the data public. What ASWB says is that their exams are a defensible measure of social work competence, which means that they believe that the racial and other disparities are accurate representations of the competence of social workers. In other words, they're saying white people are more competent than people of color, that younger people are more competent than older folks, that native English speakers are more competent than non-native English speakers. That is their position. Well, to me, if you're defending exams that keep certain populations out of the profession in wildly disproportionate ways and deprive communities, social workers who share their identities and experiences, then you better demonstrate without a shadow of a doubt that those exams actually do what you say they do. The bar should be very high, right? I mean, social workers are asked to engage in evidence-based practice, right? So the question is, what is the evidence that current licensing exams measure social work competence or have any known relationship to competent, safe, and ethical practice? Well, in the next slide, I'm going to present that evidence, and I want you to be ready. Here it is. That's right. There isn't any, and I've tried hard to find it. In the 40 years that exams have been a regular part of licensure, nobody, ASW nor anyone else, has produced any research or evidence that the exams protect anyone. They simply want you to believe it's true. That is not acceptable. So we can either trust empty promises and accept racial and other discrimination, or we can say enough is enough. So one more slide. So another question that commonly comes up is that people wonder if the score disparities have to do with the quality of schools that people attend. But the overall data doesn't support this. So while there is a fair amount of variation among schools for overall pass rates around the country for a variety of complex reasons, even those schools who have overall higher pass rates generally still have significant racial or other disparities. There are some exceptions, but not many. For example, in Maryland, not to pick on anyone in particular, the University of Maryland program shows higher overall passing rates than Salisbury University. However, both have large racial disparities. For another example, Michigan University, which is currently ranked as the #1 school of social work in the country, has major racial disparities with 92% white clinical exam passing rates compared to 64% Black passing rates. So in short, the consistent disparities across schools suggest that where you went to school has very little bearing on this actual issue, okay? But the most important question is, how is this impacting people's lives and careers? And so that's what we want to turn to next and hear the stories of folks impacted by this.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, we will talk about testimonies, and we request that every person that gives a testimony takes at least 2 to 3 minutes. Please don't go over, because there's a lot more to go. I'll go first. My name is Dr. Kyle Berkeley. Before I go any further, I just want to point out some words that we all should know: service, social justice, dignity, and worth of a person, importance of human relationship, integrity, and competency. So harmful words such as people don't study, which was used at a previous meeting, even though they fail the exam, they don't study and they take the exam again and they still fail. It's pretty harmful when people like myself have spent over $2,000 in study materials with my other white counterparts, and I still miss it by 2 or 3 points. I've even spoke to previous leaders like Dr. Stanley Weinstein about these practices and about possible data that can look and prove this point, and was met with somewhat resistance and told that that data didn't exist and there isn't nothing but just study more, you're going to pass it eventually. Decreasing, not passing this exam decreases your earning potential. I've been in this field for more than 14 years, yet I still make intake money, which is insulting. Very insulting when I have student loans that this field is supposed to allow me to have a little bit better in life, right? I was supposed to make a little bit more money, which allows me to live somewhat of a modest middle-class lifestyle and be able to pay for the schools I went to. But I have to rob Peter to pay Paul, thanks to an exam that I can't pass, thanks. And this right here is not an attack on this profession. It's not an attack on women's rights as it was presented in a previous meeting. It is more so looking at the rights of people that look like myself and others on this chat to at least participate in this field. This is a wonderful field. I would not have chosen this in grad school or undergrad, and a huge promoter of this field. I've taken this exam 13 plus times, failed it by as little as 1 point, at most by 8 points. I have studied with my white counterparts, one of which I took the exam the same day she did. She scored a 102. I scored a 103. She became my supervisor. We went to the same test taking place as well. I spent, again, more than $2,000+ in study materials, taking organizations like Fill in the Gaps, Social Work Solutions, the Therapist Development Center, and LEAP. Baltimore has a population of 576,498 people. 60.9% of those people are African American. 27.3% of those people are white. Yeah, as far as representation and leadership, the LCSWC exam is a barrier for my earning potential and my ability to be promoted. So that barrier seems somewhat on purpose if you look at those numbers that we've shown earlier and the numbers I just gave. So if the LCSWC provides opportunities, let us remember the words I just said before, which is service to people, social justice, dignity and worth of a person, integrity and competency. Thank you for your time. Next person.
Manny?
Before Manny starts, it's a good time to switch the interpreters out.
And again, thank you to our interpreters for being involved in this. We really appreciate you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much for sharing, Kyle. Let me know when I can start. Okay. Yes. All right, guys. So thank you for basically coming by here tonight. I know like plenty of you are like probably very hungry. I am, by the way, starving. But my name is Manny for short. I have my master's and my bachelor's in social work. I graduated from McDermott College in like 2020. Then I got my master's in Shippensburg University in 2022. So I just not graduated. But hearing Dr. Kyle Berkeley's story, it's very similar to mine. Like I graduated from McDaniel, and I was admitted into my master's program in the advanced standing program, meaning that you are supposed to be exceptional into like your your field. I had tremendous professors to where my master's was like a walk in the park. I had like straight A's, and coming from high school where I like had like a 2.0, it was like a sheer miracle. It really felt like social work was like the actual place for me. Personally, I have a speech impediment. I stutter a lot, but I found that and I'm really authentic with clientele, my speech just flows naturally. Hence why I did not write a speech today. But so I was excelling through multiple degrees. I got my bachelor's and master's within 4 years. I got 2 degrees in 4 years. That's amazing. I'm an amazing person. And then I graduate. I come back to Baltimore because I want to work for people who look like me in a town that I was born and raised. And the only gateway I'm having is a test. And that's abysmal because I feel like I took this exam probably 3 times in a row. I failed it within 10 points and like 1 point. Whereas I know people who don't look like me from Shippensburg in Pennsylvania, all white students who passed, who barely even studied, who passed within like 120 points. And it can be frustrating. It's extremely frustrating. Like this test has caused me a lot of depression, a lot of like self-loathing, a lot of like just overall sadness. I was a unpleasant person, and it's a drastic shift from like I felt like college made me like this really person like ready just to like hit the ground running, entering my field, and then the test just shattered my confidence almost immediately. And it was extraordinarily painful. That I'm lucky that I found this group of people, of like social workers that I could actually like look up to. Like these are people like who are at stages that I want to be at, especially like a Dr. Berkeley. Like he's where I want to be, and that's amazing. And so yeah, like I'm unable to enter my profession. I didn't really get a job until December. I had to find a job in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania is a Caucasian state. They don't need people who look like me. Like, to be honest, they're good. We're actually the ones who need people who actually have our own like of experiences, who actually like kind of like need that. So thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks, Manny. Tammy?
Hi, my name is Tammy Montague, and I'm one of the intersectors. I am 50 plus, and also African American. I'm just going to speak to the point. Black people for a long time have confronted on a daily basis a deeply held racism. It exists in every institution. It doesn't end. Higher education levels, it doesn't end. Earnings and wages, it doesn't end. Unemployment, it doesn't end. Tax benefits, tax cuts, look, come on now, it's tax time. It doesn't end. And down to life expectancy, it doesn't end. And harm in the career, lower wages. I mean, like microaggressions in the workplace. I'm gonna say just like this: if you know you have an LCSWC, and I know you have an LCSWC, why tell me you have one just to make a point? And I was an 4.0 student. I went back to school at the age of 45. I got 2 master's degree. I'm a PhD candidate, and things like that. And the LMSW was easy for me. I took it straight up out of graduating with my master's, and I passed on the first try. And these past few years, and now able to take the LCSW, and I've taken it 3 times, and I haven't been able to pass. Last time, missing it by 2 points. Of course, it's devastating when you don't pass, but I look at it a little different. You know, I love my HBCU. I just want to say that I looked at these rates, and it's appalling, right? There's when the first social work book I got was Social Work Practice with African American Families, talked about an effective strengths-based approach for solutions for survival and change. You can't help people to process and heal their trauma on the surface. And that's what these tests are. They're surface level tests. And I just want to thank my professors and all, you know, they would tell me things that I couldn't understand when I was in school. And Dr. Daniels, leave it on the shelf. And I just want to thank you, because when it became to be in practice, I pulled things off the shelf, and I found that I had to go deeper. I just realized that sometimes you can go real deep, like I'm a deep person. And there's something that Baldwin and Du Bois used to talk about, double consciousness, and being this psychological challenge for Black people, where we have to see ourselves through eyes of a racist white society. And look, I can't help it that I'm deep, right? I'm gonna say I'm deep. So the test isn't deep enough for me. Not right now. So now I'm getting, I get my colleagues give me advice, and the advice is, Tammy, you too deep. You've got to take this test and act as if you're a 40-year-old white European female. And another colleague told me that finally passed. She said, if you don't know the answer, pick what the white lady would pick. And that's just not the way we should be handling this. It really isn't. I just, lastly, I just like to say, for those that have passed the test, congratulations and welcome to social work. And for those that haven't passed the test, congratulations, welcome to social work, because we are social workers. Thank you.
Miss Tammy, oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. Dr. Hani Pucci is next. I'm excited.
Let's see here. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me your time to explain about, my experiences here. This is an issue really close to my heart. Just looking back, this has never been easy. I graduated with an MSW from the University of New York. And I'm sorry, screen was freezing. I can see you. So I graduated from NYU with my MSW from there. And, looking for a job, many jobs, they tend to require a license. So I found a license at a deaf institute in New York, and they required licensure. But they were willing to provide me with time to work on that and get it, because I had just recently graduated. So yeah, I went to go take my exam 5 times. I failed, but understand, each time I failed by just a few points. I had really struggled with it. So, I didn't get the accommodations, understand, accommodations could be like 2 hours added, with an ASL interpreter, but, not, just, they can explain. I'm sorry, the interpreter screen is freezing. I'm sorry, the interpreter screen was freezing again. Okay. So accommodations. So yes, interpreter, I did have an interpreter, but the interpreters can't, the questions that are they can't add anything, they are there only to, interpret the questions. So sometimes, English is not my first language. So ASL, sometimes there's a struggle with that. Which I really struggled with. So I failed these exams, and I felt like, all my social work opportunities were over, and, I was ready to leave my job in New York, because I really, I did have a provisional license and in social work, but I was turned down for that. And I was like, oh, what else could I do? I was so frustrated, with these struggles at the job. So I thought, you know what? I did have a wonderful supportive supervisor who wanted to keep me working there, because there were deaf children there in need of services and deaf students. And, I struggled, but I was able to get a teaching certificate. I was as a teaching staff there, but it wasn't the best, thing. I felt like we were really playing with the system that existed. So, again, that was frustrating, so I was ready to leave New York. I moved to DC, and, I pretty much had given up on that goal. So when I went through Gallaudet University, I studied, I got my PhD, and in the back of my head, I was like, I still have that other track there. And, I was determined to go and pass it. So, I decided to go ahead and finish up the PhD. And once I was done with that, I graduated in 2012. I still had that nagging, I need just that one more thing accomplished. So in 2015, I was still in Washington, D.C., but the accommodations that they offered were so different from New York State. So they were able to give me an additional 4 hours of testing time compared to only the 2 hours of accommodations that they were willing to offer. And also the interpreter was allowed to change the questions from English to ASL, which, made such a big difference. It was in my language and I could understand everything clearly. I couldn't, it was like 180 things. They didn't have to do the whole thing for me, but I was able to ask where I needed clarifications in English, and I was able to get through that process. There were some questions that I still struggle with, like there were 2 answers for one question that might be so similar, and I was struggling with which one was the right one. And the interpreter being able to translate into ASL made me understand exactly what it was they were looking for and which one the right answer was. So throughout all of my tenure, back in 2005, that was the first time I took that, to 2015. So the last time I took that test in Washington, D.C., I was able to pass that the very first time. I mean, that really shows you, that the disparity. So, I've gone ahead with my clinical, and, now I'm I've got about 500 hours left to go, and then I'm going to have to go and take the exam again, you know, the clinical license test. And, you know, I'm nervous, but I've got my fingers crossed, you know, so that's my story. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, and now it's me. Okay. And thank you again, Karen. We really do appreciate you.
You're very welcome again.
My name is Felicia Ross. I am an LMSW. I'm trying to make this quick. I want to honor everybody who has went. I'm buzzing because this is the type of stuff that I live for. So I'm gonna try not to put on my deaconess hat. I'm originally from California. I'm an Oakland native, and I had my formative years in San Diego. I'm a military brat. Both of my parents were highly decorated officers in the military, and my home has definitely been between the DMV and California for the majority of my life. And so educational experiences looked pretty middle class, and I'll let you guys know in a second why that's important. But first, I really want to see everybody in the chat. If you are of the global majority and its intersections, could you please emoji a heart or whatever emoji that you want to use if it took you more than 1 or 2 times to pass the LMSW or the LCSW exam? And I'm going to continue speaking. I just want people to really see people. And they're already rolling in. For my experience, I went to Simmons University for my master's. I did their online cohort. I did my bachelor's in counseling psychology. Social work was definitely not the field that I was going to choose, but social work definitely chose me, and I'm glad that it did. What did not happen for me was the understanding of how different Maryland is in terms of how the board works, and in conjunction how the ASWB board works. So what happened in my situation, if I sum it up fastly, is that just the application process alone for the Maryland board was 5 or 6 months. And I was not expecting that. I had jobs on the table. I lost the jobs on the table because it took so long to get to just the approval to test. And then I went into test. I studied. I did TDC. I did Philatrell. I was in all of the Facebook groups. I did all of the study groups, and I failed. I failed by 3 points the first time. I had to wait 6 months. I had to pay again. And by that time, I had already put out so much money, and I just was not expecting that, in addition to not having a job. So your girl was kind of out here trying to figure things out. And then going and passing my LMSW on the second try. And I felt like I was very lucky because I had heard up until that point that people of color specifically were not passing even as fast as that, which is very unfortunate. And I'm scrolling through the chat, and I can already see how many hearts, how many emojis there are. There are people on this call who had a duty to not just a certain population of social workers, but to all social workers, and they did not uphold the standards of the social work profession. And that is unfortunate for all of us. And what is the issue for me, and has always been the issue for me, is that if social work is also in conjunction with social justice, you're failing social workers. You're failing social workers, and above that, you're failing the public. By no means, I've walked through Compton a couple of times, but by no means am I claiming anybody's hood. By no means is that going to be my claim. But still, people deserve to have the cultural humility, care, and the ease when they are able to see me coming into their home, see me sitting across the screen from them as a therapist, or whatever I choose to do. And we are failing the public by this barrier of an exam. And you are now profiting off of the backs of people who want to show up for their communities. And that is a shame. So at this, I want to kind of go into our recommendations from SWARE. Specifically, We want to eliminate the entry-level exams. We all go to MSW programs that are CSWE and approved and university leaders in this field. We are ready to be licensed at this level, and we're ready for supervised practice at this level. By the time that you get through your MSW, you have already done at least a year or 2 years of internship under supervision. To then have to do that and then take a class or take a test that honestly, I don't even know if it tests anything that has to do with the field. Like Tammy said, it's very surface level. I'm deeper than that. I'm with Miss Tammy. I'm deeper than that. Black folk are not a monolith, but the Black folk I know deserve deeper than that. And that test does not culturally intersect with me. I don't think I'm the only one. So that is the one recommendation that we brought to policy. The second recommendation for policy is the replacement of the clinical level exam. We can, we're muddling through, the global majority is muddling through the LMSW, but the LCSW is really keeping people back. It keeps people back from a different level of tax bracket. It keeps people back from higher level paying jobs. And in the state of Maryland, everything has LCSWC attached, everything it feels like, and people cannot advance. And so we need an effective human-centered practice-based assessment process that should be developed for screening, for competence, and for safety for independent practice, regardless of what you want to do. Regardless of if you want to be in policy, regardless of if you want to be a therapist, but we are saying that we need support in a public health sector. There's over 1,000 of us extra that they could have, and they're failing us with these exams. And so I spoke to policy, what we were suggesting, and now I'm very proud to introduce Senator Mary Washington. For those of you who don't know Senator Mary Washington, Senator Washington represents the 43rd district, which includes Baltimore City. I believe she is also from Baltimore City and a piece of the county. She has been in the assembly since 2010, when she was the first openly gay person elected in Maryland, second in the country. She currently serves on the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee and is the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Children, Youth, and Families. And she is on the Executive Committee of the Legislative Black Caucus of Maryland. We are so excited to have you, Senator Washington.
Well, I'm just honored to be here. Thank you all.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Before you start, Senator, can we take a moment to switch interpreters?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, it takes a minute to find.
No, no rush at all. I tried to catch her before she started speaking. All right.
All right, you're good to go.
Good evening, everyone. Wow, there's over 85 people here this evening, and I'm just honored to be a part of this. Social workers, you have always been at the forefront of social justice, civil rights, and frankly, it is time that you turn that skill to advocate for yourselves. And too often you don't, you do whatever you can to take care of all of us writ large. You focus your critique and study and energy and concern on the welfare of others. And I am grateful, and we are grateful for everything that you've done in the past, and also everything that you've done over the last 3 years, as we've dealt, 2 years that we've dealt with this, with COVID and the pandemic and all the crises before. Now is the time for the state to take responsibility for lifting you up and enabling more of you to do the work that you are drawn to do, and to end one of the additional legacies of the educational apartheid in Maryland. Interestingly, I'll just say that prior to getting on with all of you today, I've been reading a report generated by a consultant about the consent decrees or the apartheid that we have in higher education. So the lawsuits that Black former students sued the University of Maryland. And I'm just going through and reading the testimony and going through and looking at the times over and over that individuals have attempted to remedy it, and the times that the system, the University of Maryland system, pushed back. It appealed time and time again. And frankly, I was caught by surprise when the report came out about the racial disparities in passing rates on the social work exam. I was surprised by the reaction of our board of examiners. And therefore, because of that, and frankly, I was surprised by the delayed response of the national. But I'm buoyed by the formation of SWARE, by the commitment that the local chapter of the NSW has to this. And I'm just so excited to be able to have the hearing, the public hearing. And this is the hearing that you should have been allowed to have 2 weeks ago, I think it was, or a week or so ago, when you didn't have the opportunity to tell these stories. And so I'm not going to say that they are, thank you. I'm not going to say these are solutions. I think they are steps in the right direction. And they are tools for both accountability, addressing the workforce shortage, and I hope also righting the wrongs that this exam has perpetrated over the years. So the first bill, so there's two pieces of legislation that I've put in, and are all based on your recommendations, considering some options. Do we have a moratorium on the exam? So just right now, let's just stop the exam until we can find out something better. Do we remove the requirement altogether? Do we remove the use of the bachelor's exam and the master's exam? That was suggested, in keeping the clinical exam. Or perhaps we could have advanced generalists or certified licensing exams. What do we do with the profession? Do we mandate a new study for ASWB for the licensing, demand that they go back to the beginning? Because it looks like their study, and I guess I got this data from all of you, that they did a 2017 study, and only 20% of the participants were of color. And so I'm an educator like many of you, and if I give an exam to my students and a significant number of my students don't pass the exam, or there's a question where they don't pass, I don't think what is wrong with my students. I believe truly, what did I do not to convey this information? Or what is wrong with the question? Or this question is not measuring what I want it to measure. All of you have made so many points, I think, to substantiate that this exam indeed is measuring what it was designed to measure. And I do think it's rooted, in the entrance of Black people into this profession. I want to thank Tammy Montague, Emmanuel Wilkerson, Felicia, Kyle, Conchetta, Michael, all of you who have organized this. it will be a fight, but I think with you speaking your truth, combining it with the data. And yes, Felisa, I hate that you have to say I am, oh, you know, it's okay because I'm a middle-class Black child. So many of us know about that. That sort of excuse the assumption that somehow our failure to progress in our chosen professions has to do with some sort of dysfunction in our family. Can we say Moynihan report? So, you know, it's just going to take a while to unhinge that view of our families and of our intelligence. But in the meantime, we can make sure that the state of Maryland is not involved in perpetrating that lie about our students and our future social workers. So I look forward to working with all of you, withstanding with all of you, and I suspect many of my colleagues will join in this as well.
Thank you, Senator Washington. I appreciate you very much. So we are now at the time for questions. We are actually right on time. I'm really excited. So there were a list of questions sent in. If anyone has any other questions, if you don't hear your question being answered, like please go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm seeing a couple now. Me and Rachel will tag team. I know that there's questions for Mary Beth, there's questions for Senator Washington, there may be a mix. And so I'll start with one that's from Mary Beth. Mary Beth, where is the information for the free prep courses / classes? I know that someone did respond in the chat. I'm just not sure if everybody was able to see it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll put my email address in the chat. You can email me. We are posting that. We're getting ready to post that on our website here, and we'll put it out in our e-news, but we are already compiling lists of those classes, and it'll be an ongoing thing. But I'll put my email in the chat, and you can absolutely reach out to me with your questions about it.
Thank you, Mary Beth.
Mm-hmm.
The second question that has come up is, and our questions aren't going to be answered just by me. We have designated folks, so they'll be hopping in and out. Okay, let me focus on the questions for Senator Washington because we want to respect your time. Were there any specific questions for Senator Washington? I'm not seeing any on the sheet that I have. So. And you can put them in the chat. How can we support this legislation? Oh, we'll start there. There's lots coming in.
So we're just getting ready to drop it. I have it right here, and we're getting signatures. Getting people to just educating people a bit about it, and I'm hoping tomorrow we'll put it in, and then there'll be a bill number, and we'll have a bill hearing, and you will testify, and we will. Yeah, that's the process, and absolutely, yeah. So, I'm sorry, the other bill, I forgot a big item in it, is the second bill, is to have a work group to actually design, make recommendations, right? To really think about this over the next year, so we can have immediate solutions, addressing, enabling a temporary licensure, allowing a way for people to get their careers restarted despite not being able to pass the exam, but then concurrently studying and determining what is the best path forward in addition to or in replacement of the licensing exam. I apologize, but I didn't add that important second one. So those two, it's very important that we're doing both, as was said earlier, a short-term mitigation of harm is what I see in my view, not in a legal sense, but in ethical sense, and then a path forward.
Beautiful. Bonita McMorris asks, how long will this process be for this amendment to the law?
So to pass this law, well, we hope by April that the governor, it will be on the governor's desk, and hopefully he'll sign it. Well, I'm certain that when we get it to his desk, he'll sign it. But there'll be debate, there'll be opposition, there will be testimony for those who are invested in the exam. I think they may even be on this meeting, but there's a whole infrastructure, a whole business invested in national testing. People make a lot of money on that. And so I suspect that once this bill drops, that the national entity will hire lobbyists to convince the legislature that that these bills should not pass. So you should be prepared to fight national or even international interests in this, in maintaining the status quo.
And I think that rolls into the next question by Rachel, and maybe you can answer this. From the powers that be perspective, stakes are high at this moment because of the optics of our opposition to the exam. Right. Is that it will delay or prevent Maryland entering the interstate compact based on the ASWB exams? Are there a policy strategy for how this liberatory work can be framed as an opportunity to expand access rather than limit it?
And that's what the bill is doing. Your connection to not only racial disparities, but age, I think is also really, really key. Also connecting it to a very real workforce need and recovery. And we're investing a lot as a legislature in behavioral health. If we don't have people to service our state and our people in our state, those are very high stakes. So the high stakes of the needs of our population that the profession provides, I think, are competitive with individuals who are in the stake of it. Frankly, the interstate compact, I think we should think about that as a whole. We're looking at it at other professions in light of what some legislatures are doing in other states, prohibiting access to certain types of reproductive health care or education policies. Not sure how some of those will have an impact on our providers. So in other fields, we're looking at these. I do think we should slow down the compact. We should slow everything down, a moratorium on all decisions until this work group has an opportunity to do its work.
Jessica asked, do you want co-sponsors? Shall we contact our legislators to ask them to co-sponsor? Yes, but right now I'm trying to just put the bill in. Sometimes, it took a while to draft, so people can be co-sponsors later. But I'm just trying to drop the bill right away so that we can get it moving along. What's also really exciting is that the Legislative Black Caucus is going to has asked me to invite like 4 or 5, and perhaps it's those of you who spoke today to present this concern to them as well. So I also believe that the Legislative Black Caucus will support this, as will the Women's Caucus. Beautiful. So I don't know if this is necessarily a question strictly for you. I think other members of SWARE can hop on it. I may as well. The question has come up. So if there's not an exam leading to licensure, how is our profession going to preserve its credibility? I'm a forensic social worker and I write mitigation reports and testify as an expert on the stand in court. Our work is often scrutinized by the prosecutor and our skill level is questioned. Without the distinction of passing an exam to gain my credentials, how is the credibility of the profession preserved? Tonight, they presented data that refutes the notion that the exam actually makes anyone quote unquote credible. Other countries like the UK, for example, have a licensing process, but they don't take exams at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, let me just take a hit because I'm sure I'll get that question. So I might as well start working on it. Also, so in the UK, they don't have licensing at all. Is that what he said, that there's no license?
They have a licensing process, but they don't take the exams.
Okay, so therefore all the social workers in the UK incompetent? I mean,
Don't some people look at endorsements and other ways, other paths? I believe that's something that I think we would with our
so I guess I was being rhetorical. So it's very clear, and I think they said this at the beginning, that this is not saying that there won't be a process by which people get a license, right? So it's about what are the steps towards that license. And if you have a license, then you should be considered able to practice. But I definitely get the historical concern that individuals have about the social work profession. As a sociologist and a historian, I would suggest that rather than that being about a licensure, that it has to do with the fact that you take care of people and that you are a majority female profession. It does not have anything to do, and you can get as many licenses that you have, but until we end sexism and discrimination based on race and essentially the stigmatization of the poor, your profession will be what it is, viewed by those who are not educated enough to really understand the importance. So it's not the exam that makes your profession respected, it's the work that you do.
Yeah, Felicia, can I speak to that for one sec? So this is Mike Massey again. Yeah, I think from a SWARE perspective, I don't know if I'm speaking for, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we've had these conversations. I think there's work to be done around changing the narrative, but there's some things we have on our side. One, we have evidence on our side. The credibility of the exams is based on what you've been told matters, but the data doesn't back that up. And so we can leverage actual evidence to say that this is not a credible way to measure competence of social workers. But I think the more important question from our standpoint, and this is not necessarily a political strategy, but as social workers, we have to ask ourselves if the interstate compact and the credibility of others is worth sacrificing the careers, the mental health, the equality, the advancement of our, brothers and sisters here, right? That are worth being in the profession and being able to advance in that profession. You have to take that stand and then fight for the credibility that we deserve. But if we're willing to sacrifice our, the people we work with, our social work colleagues for a little bit of credibility, then I think we'll probably have to reprioritize, is how I would put it.
Okay. Thank you.
This is the interpreter. It would be a good time to switch right now, Felicia.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. I don't see any more questions for Senator Washington. Senator Washington, you are the GOAT. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. The next question that I do have for Swear is, how does this connect to broader issues of racial disparity and racism within social work?
That's a big question, right?
It's a big
Can,
question.
can I start? I'll start, and then
Yes.
I welcome folks. You know, and so this is sort of based on some, just kind of looking back at the history, that it's deeply part of our history. Right? We know that the beginnings of the very beginnings of social work, that it was about white Christian upper middle class women who got to call themselves social workers. A few men. There were Black people and people of color doing social work, but they weren't able to call themselves social workers at the time because they were not counted um, as people who could be professionals. We know it goes all the way back to the beginning. So even moving up into the test, when licensing was being talked about in the 70s and up into the 80s, the National Association of Black Social Workers said at the time, this is about discrimination against Black people and other people of color, and no one listened. And for 40 years, we've been saying, or people have been saying, these exams are discriminatory, and ASWB and didn't listen. Finally, 40 years later, they've actually released data to say that it is. So yeah, I think it's deeply tied into a profession that has a lot of soul searching to do. I think this is part of the work that we're hoping to do at SWARE. So I could go on, as you could see. But.
Yes, thank you. I will add that this SWARE came together because we were seeing the disparities, and this is just one barrier. So we also know that there's an issue with some of the ethics that social work has put out. We also know that there's issues in aspects of other realms of the social work profession. I do think us starting with this biggest barrier to just get people into the field so that they no longer have to leave the field because of an exam, because of 4 hours compared to years of studying. I think that this is a good place to start, and I think it doesn't necessarily eliminate racial disparity, but we're bridging a gap that needs to be bridged. The next question, has anyone and I saw this in the chat as well, has anyone reached out to the ACLU or NAACP about whether a lawsuit is feasible? And I think someone had put it in the chat that there has been talk about that. I know that other states, from what I know, have started that process. I do not know if anyone in the state of Maryland has, though. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone else can speak to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. If someone wants to circle back, we can, because we only have a few more
Seeing
minutes.
one in the chat, Felicia, could you share with ASWB that their questions are not accommodated for deaf test takers? For example, they would use at least likely to in their questions. Their questions need to be more simplified, straightforward, and less complicating. Couldn't agree more. And I think this shows English is a second language, because written English is your second language, and they need to do better at accommodating sign language, at accommodating Spanish. We have so many people who provide services in Spanish, and they claim that the writing is on a 10th grade level, but it really trips people up whose first language is not English.
Absolutely. I don't know if we have anyone here from the ASWB. I doubt it. But if we do, I hope they heard that. I hope they heard all of it, actually. And in addition to that, I know that the ASWB has town halls coming up, and as soon as we get that information, because they are offering spaces to share, we will definitely make sure to send that out.
All the town halls are full. They're like full, but they are going to have a survey. And so for people who can't get into one of the in-person or virtual town halls, you can fill out a survey, and we definitely encourage everybody to do that.
And we just touched on this you know, what are the challenges to provide full accessibility for deaf, hard of hearing, BIPOC social workers? I think that's a big question, one that we wish we probably could answer right away. I think people are still getting admitted. I think personally, I don't think that there should be any challenges to providing full accessibility to any folks that need disability accommodation. I do know that the ASWB does make it difficult, and I think that that is something to also bring up in one of the town halls, or at least see where we could go from there. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to speak to that.
Someone commented, Dr. Connie, thanks. It would be helpful to have stats on disability accommodations to see the comparisons. And in my mind, this was just a huge glaring omission from their report, that they did not even release any statistics about people who utilize disability accommodations. And I was just chatting with somebody the other day. They even make it so hard just to like have some food in your locker when you're taking a test, and they make you go in person to your doctor and get the form signed. And they add a lot of unnecessary barriers to our disabled colleagues taking this exam that really aren't necessary and don't do anything but gatekeep.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I'll add to that too, is that like I said, this is 40 years just to get this data released. There's been a long history of them withholding data, withholding information about how they make their tests, how they test for bias, how they design even the standards for figuring out who's competent or not. It's all a mystery. And meanwhile, I think it's important to point out that they are sitting right now on 45 million, this is ASWB, $45 million in assets based on these exams. So it's a profit machine right now. It's a money-making machine on the backs of a lot of people who deserve a lot better.
So I want to honor everybody's time. We are promptly at 8. I'm going to pass it back to Kyle. We are leaving the room open for about, I think, did we agree 30 extra minutes to just let people chat, connect, ask more questions. And yeah, Kyle.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining tonight. I did want to tell everybody how you can stay in contact. If you RSVP for this, we can send you a follow-up message. We meet every Tuesday. Please feel free to join us. We meet via Zoom every Tuesday, and you can also sign up on our website, which is on one of the last slides. The information related to that. Thank you. Again, we'll be answering more questions after this meeting officially ends. I do want to thank every person for their time, every question that was asked. I want to thank our interpreters tonight. They did a wonderful job. Any person that had a question that they felt nervous about asking, or they were scared about putting out there, again, you could feel free to talk about this in the discussion that we're going to have very shortly. And, you know, time is precious to each and every one of you. So thank you so much for it.